I am Maria. Believe it or not, it's taken me a lifetime to be able to say that and feel it was enough. That may be somewhat surprising, but stick with me here and I'll try to explain. Searching for the authentic Maria, uncovering, discovering, and recovering her has been a challenge for me all my life. For decades, I couldn't see her because I was looking for myself in all the wrong places. Of course, I didn't know that because I thought I had this self-awareness thing down cold. In fact, in 2000, I published the bestseller, 10 Things I Wish I'd Known Before I Went Out into the Real World, because I wanted to share all the lessons I'd learned about love, marriage, kids, and how to navigate your way into a high-powered career. Everything I thought you needed to know if you wanted to have it all in this life, as I thought I did. I was 45 years old at that time, and I ended the book with, "I'll get back to you in 10 years. That's when I just knew I'd be ready to publish a self-congratulatory update on how extraordinarily well I'd done by continuing to apply those same 10 lessons to my own life. In fact, I was sure I'd be able to come up with 10 more pithy bits of hard-earned wisdom about love, marriage, kids, and a career by then. But when I did turn 55 years old, I was in no emotional shape to write a book. In fact, I was barely able to get out of bed. So much for my delusions of self-awareness. Well, now I'm in my 60s, and thank God I'm up and out of bed, standing on my own 2 feet. Getting here hasn't been easy, but I'm grateful to have finally learned some real hard truths about life and about myself that just might be worth passing on. You may be wondering what on earth took me so long to see these truths. Trust me, I've asked myself that question a million times. But I now understand that I couldn't have known these truths until I learned them. And I couldn't have learned them until I lived them. And I couldn't have lived them until I had to. I had to when circumstances forced me to break through my lifelong industrial strength wall of capital D denial, so I could come face to face with the self I had left behind. The self I had buried under a pile of relationships, accomplishments, titles, and false beliefs. No one did that to me. I did it to myself. So under all of the rubble, I had to ask, who was Maria? The beginning of getting some real answers came when I started writing poetry. I've always loved poetry. Years ago, I discovered Mary Oliver's poem, The Journey, and it spoke directly to my soul. When I turned 50, a good friend gave me a copy of Derek Walcott's poem, Love After Love, and I felt like it was written for me and about me. And then I discovered the poet and the mystic Rumi, who talked about that field out beyond wrongdoing and right-doing. Over the years, I'd even taken a stab at writing poetry myself, but I always seemed to just skim the surface of what I was feeling inside. But now, all of a sudden, and to my surprise, in the darkest period of my life, when I sat down and put pen to paper, all the stories I'd been telling myself, all the walls I had built up around myself started to fall away. And what I was actually feeling poured out of me in the form of poems. Now, when many people think of poetry, they think of rhyming couplets or Shakespearean sonnets. I did too, and that made the idea of writing poetry intimidating to me. But once I gave myself the permission to just write down whatever I was feeling, words that were true, that were raw, that made me feel vulnerable, that didn't even have to make sense, I found that poetry was the way for me to express what was buried deep inside. All of a sudden, poetry didn't feel out of reach to me anymore. It didn't have to rhyme. It didn't have to fit into a certain structure. It didn't have to have narrative cohesion. It just had to be true. So true, it often shocked me.